Well, hello everyone, ET here, and welcome back to WYSTEM. We are excited to present week number 2, which if you don't know, STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Last week we kicked off WYSTEM with Science Week, and we were very honored to have Dr. Dan and Amy Serdam tell us all about bacteria, viruses. We saw blood being drawn. We looked at blood plasma, and we had a bunch of really cool terms. So we really do hope that you enjoyed the very first week of WYSTEM for Science Week. And this week, as you know, we are moving into our next STEM topic, which is technology. And we've got someone super amazing that we're going to be with this week, teaching you all about a multitude of things. But first, I definitely want to kind of remind you about some participation things. So sometime, if you did not see Science Week, if you look at YouTube right now, you can go back. They are ready for you to watch at any time. 2 videos, 30 minutes long. And we are super excited to have partnered with Anderson Elementary's PTO board to be able to offer a Wyoming student the opportunity to win a 3D printer for their school. So when you go back to school, the ability to learn and design, we're going to be talking a lot about that next week in Engineering Week and then also in Mathematics Week. But what a great opportunity for you to learn about something and then go and print something and make it. And so how you're going to win that 3D printer is that at some point in the 2 videos last week, there was a code word. It was very brief. It just flashed up on the screen for maybe a few seconds. And what we're going to ask is look for that code word for each of the weeks. There'll be 4 of them for each of them. And if you, at the end of WYSTEM, will have a form, you can put those 4 code words in, and then we're going to do a random drawing so that whatever school you go to in Wyoming, we will be sending them a free 3D printer. So that code word for week 1 has already shown up. You can go back and find it. And then at some point, either tonight or on Thursday night's video, we will have the code word for Technology Week. So keep an eye on it. And that's how you're going to win this awesome 3D printer. So once again, welcome back. And I don't want to take up any more time because this is Technology Week, and we are really, really privileged to have an amazing person that works at the University of Wyoming to be leading Technology Week. And that person is Teal Wyckoff. And Teal is a research scientist at the Wyoming Geographical Information Science Center at the University of Wyoming. And her job, which she will talk to you a little bit about what she does, is all about mapping and data and how we're using this to continue to track things like animals and obviously COVID-19. And so we're just really, really thankful to have Teal lead Technology Week. So with that being said, thank you, Teal, very much for joining us this evening. We are so excited to have you on WYSTEM for Technology Week. So Teal, I'm going to transition it over to you. What do you have in store for us this week?
Well, thank you for that introduction, ET, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Technology Week. So what we are going to talk about are a variety of things. We're going to start by taking a look at how we leverage technology to understand wildlife movement, management, habitat management, a variety of things, as well as understanding disease spread from a wildlife perspective. And then for Thursday, we're going to continue to talk about technology and the role of geography, but we're going to focus more on human movement across the landscape as well as disease spread. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to share some resources with you. We're going to jump in and start to take a look at some maps. Are you ready, ET? Taking a look at our some technology resources. Now, I want to mention before I get started that these are going to be online resources that are available for you. We are going to post these on the website after tonight's session. So feel free to check back because these are going to be some tools that we hope you will be able to use to start to explore Wyoming and to explore your community. So as I said, we're going to start out by talking about wildlife and how we use technology and geography to understand topics in wildlife, research management, and even decision making, right? These are all things that we can leverage to understand our world, all the way from a global perspective, right down to our community. So before I dive into the wildlife stuff, however, I wanted to talk about the very first thing that I get asked anytime I'm in any community or group of people, whether I'm talking to policymakers or land managers or students or whomever it might be. The first question I get asked is, can I see my house? And so the first thing that we are going to talk about is working with an interactive map to start to ask some very basic spatial or geospatial questions about our community. So some questions that you might ask if you come back in and use this tool later. What county do you live in? Do you know where that is in Wyoming? Do you know what your neighboring counties are? Can you find your town? And within that town, do you think you could zoom in and find your house? So that's what we're going to do first. I am going to open a map that we made leveraging a variety of technology resources and give you a sense of some of the power of technology and how we can use that to understand our landscapes and how it might lead to our interaction with each other. So here we are in Wyoming, right? We see all of our Wyoming counties and we see our Wyoming towns. Now, one of the beautiful things about technology is that it allows us to interact with the map rather than just having a piece of paper, which of course is also valuable, but this gives us an extra rich amount of information. We can click around, we can get a sense of our city and our county. So here I've zoomed in on Casper. And I know just by clicking through here that Casper resides in Natrona County. Now, some of the other tools that are available in here, we can actually take a look at a map legend. So one of the basics of map making, as I'm sure quite a few of us know already, is that a map is associated with a legend, right? So a key to help us understand where we are and what the resources are that we're looking at. So here I've opened a legend. We know that our capital city, does anyone know what that is? I bet some of you are actually tonight located in Cheyenne. Well, that's our capital. And I of course am pretty centric on where I live, so that's what I'm going to highlight today. So I live in the town of Laramie, Wyoming. And here we are. I'm going to zoom in to the area where I live. And perhaps some of you tonight are joining us from Laramie as well. Now, one of the things that we talked about before are, you can find your county, your town, your community. Perhaps you can even find your house. But one of the other things we can leverage maps to do is to also understand where we are in relation to our space. So perhaps we are interested in knowing, when I go for a walk from where I live, from my house, and I want to know, how far is my walk when I go walk around the park? Well, before I do that, I want to point out just a couple other resources that we have. Again, the power of technology, bringing just endless amounts of information right to our fingertips. So here I've added aerial imagery or aerial photography to the map. This is something, again, a tool that you can all come in here and start to leverage and play with later. So we have imagery, we have a variety of topographic maps that we can add in. But what I'm specifically interested in is the park that is near my house. It's called Washington Park. And here I've changed that base map so that we are looking at that particular park. Now, we've added a few tools to this map that we can leverage to start to map out our environment, right? Our community. What is our home range? Now, I'm going to talk about home range again when we talk about wildlife, but here I'm talking about us. what are the resources in our community, we could start to understand, where are we in relation to our nearest grocery store? Where do we live in relation to our neighborhood school? Perhaps that's the school that we go to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a point on the map that's going to be a point for my proposed house location. So I'm going to say I live here on Rainbow Street. And I also, again, want to understand, how much exercise am I getting when I go for my walk? So I have some draw tools in here. I'm going to select measurement. I'm going to draw a line and I'm going to recreate my walk. This is one way of doing it. We can always track things with some kind of activity tracker, but here is the power of some of these online geospatial tools. So I'm going to leave my house. I'm going to walk down Rainbow Street. I cross 18th Street, and I'm going to walk all the way around Washington Park. And you can see that there's all sorts of resources there. Perhaps I decide I actually want to take this loop path through the park, and understanding that I could also stop at, perhaps I want to understand how close my nearest playground is. Well, there is one here at Washington Park. I think I'm going to go up 18th Street, and then I'm going to cut over here onto East Kearney. I'm going to go up South 16th and then home. And let's get a look. Oh my, I've gone 1.1 miles on my mapped route. So just a way that we can leverage technology and tools to start to understand our geography and where we live and the places that we use. I also have we've added in another little tool that we could also print out our map. So none of the information that you enter in here is saved. It's not going back to a database. This is all stuff that will actually just disappear as soon as you leave your browser session. So, but if we want to save our map that we've drawn, we can do that by printing it. I've chosen to print to a JPEG figure, and so here we are. This is something that we could save on our computer and we can use for later. So that was my little introduction to understanding where we live and some of the resources that interactive mapping technology can provide us. So I'm going to now jump back over to our main site. And we're going to talk about the role of mapping and geography and technology in understanding wildlife. We are specifically tonight going to talk about why technology is so important when we talk about bighorn sheep. So all of you who are from Wyoming, you know that we have resident bighorn sheep that live in our state. They tend to live in the mountainous areas. But one of the things that we as researchers need to understand is how can we use technology to track their movements and also to understand how that might affect their ability to spread disease. Bighorn sheep happen to be particularly susceptible to pneumonia. It is a disease that they picked up from domestic sheep, but it's something that then propagates or moves between our wild populations of sheep. So to give you an idea of how we use technology to research them and understand their population dynamics, first of all, we use global positioning systems, or GPS, and this might be a term that some of you are familiar with from your parents' phones, with something that you might use to map or get directions to a particular place in town or around the state. So we put GPS collars as researchers out on bighorn sheep so that we can start to understand how they use their habitat. Here we're looking at a whole pile of those GPS collars that are ready to go out, that are ready to be deployed. You'll notice that each one of them has a combination of things going on. So we have a battery pack, we have a GPS unit on each collar, we have an antenna. Now the antenna is actually analog. That's something that we use when we go out in the field to track them on an individual basis. We also have a color-coded number. So each animal that's out on the landscape, if we go out with binoculars and we are lucky enough to observe all of the collars that we've deployed, we also have that unique identifier. Now, the way that those GPS collars work, another big component of technology in the mapping world where I work, are information being transferred via satellite. So here, signals are transferred from that GPS collar on the animal that you just saw, and it's beamed up to our constellation of satellites that are orbiting the Earth, and then that signal is beamed back to us as researchers right onto our computers, where we can then analyze those data. So here we're actually out in the field in this case. We have a collar ready to be deployed, but we're also looking at data right on the map here, live of that animal in the wild. And we can start to get a sense of how they use their habitat. We also use technology in other ways. So when we bring animals in and affix a GPS collar, we also take a whole variety of measurements to understand the health of the animal. How much fat do they have on them? Are they ready to make it through the winter? Are they carrying twins? Are they going to have young in the spring? Technology is central to research. We also, I mentioned that bighorn sheep are susceptible to pneumonia. So one of the other health metrics that we can gather from these sheep is taking a swab. This is just very similar to the swab test that is done for COVID-19 testing in humans. Right now, we use a swab, and we are able to gather a specimen from each one of the sheep that we capture. We then collect that specimen in a vial, and then we will send that vial off to the lab. So this is very similar to what we learned in Science Week last week about humans and COVID-19. And here we are applying that same series of scientific protocols, as well as leveraging technology to make that happen. Now, so we know that, understanding bighorn sheep in our state is important to us from a research perspective. We want to sustain those populations. So being able to take these samples is one part of that question for how we understand how diseases spread. But we also know that animals move. They have a whole wide range of habitat sizes or home ranges that they use. So keep this in mind when you come back and use these resources later. When you map your own home range and the places that you travel in your town, think about that from the perspective of how we are able to map the habitat and the interaction of animals on the ground. So some of the questions that we as researchers might ask are, what habitat are the animals using? Do they stay in one place? There are some animals that have a relatively small home range. Do they move from winter range to summer range? What happens? Well, here we're going to watch a couple quick snippets of how animals move across their landscapes. So here we are. We are near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We have an animal that is wintering down here on the elk refuge, if you are familiar. You'll see that these points are moving up in elevation, right? So we're at lower elevation down here by Jackson. And what do you think this is up here? This is called Table Mountain. And here we are going through another year of data. The colors indicate the time of year. So here we are in the spring, And then the summer are in the red colors. We can see that that animal is moving across the landscape. Now it's fall, it's autumn. That animal is moving around and moving back down to its winter range. And then it's going to do that again, and it's going to make its migration. So here we've seen how an animal really is able to leverage quite a large geography, all the way from Jackson Hole, if you're familiar, all the way up into the Gros Ventre Range and up into Table Mountain. So in this particular example, right, we are looking at one animal. Every point on the map is a day that we've collected with that GPS collar that we were just looking at a few minutes ago. So just an incredible amount of information that we can now use to understand how that animal uses its habitat. Now, that was looking at one animal and their movement through their habitat. What we can also do is take a look at how do they interact together. So in this next video, we have actually 14 animals that have GPS collars on them. And they are, for some reason, let me start that again. So here we have 14 animals captured, and they are moving across the landscape. Now, what can you see as those points start to converge? What do you think is happening? Well, one thing that we might notice is the fact that there are points in time, say here on the winter ranges, they've moved out to different areas. So those represent different populations of bighorn sheep that winter in different areas. But in the summer, you can see when they come to the high country, they are all interacting with each other and in close contact. This also has context when we are the conversation that we've all been having about COVID-19 in Wyoming. So, you know, in terms of the people that we're around in our community and those that we interact with, this is an interesting illustration of how that happens in the wild as well, and how animals interact in the course of their year and in the course of their seasonal habitat use. So the next thing we're going to look at is their home range. And so what I want you to be thinking about while we look at this next map is, where do bighorn sheep live in Wyoming? What are some broad conclusions we can draw from that? Do you think that they live in the mountains by looking at this map? Do you think that they live in the plains? And where do you think that is in comparison to where you live? Are there any areas on here that you can see that might overlap with your hometown? Do you think that there might actually be some bighorn sheep that live close by? And here what we can do is we have a variety of map layers. Again, here we are back in an interactive map, getting a sense of our surroundings. So if we live, let's pick, let's zoom on in up here near Cody. Now, what we can see when we zoom in up here is that there are some layers on the map that we can take a look at. Well, I'm curious what some of these are. So I'm going to click on the data that we are looking at on the map. And these are really important areas. These are important habitat for sheep because these are places where they are able to give birth. So from a habitat management perspective, it's important for us to be able to put GPS collars out there on animals and know where those important ranges are. We can also get a sense of crucial range. So here we are looking at the blue, and I'm actually going to turn on my legend again. Remember, we already talked about legend, so that we can get a sense from here, birthing areas, and then that crucial ranges, so crucial winter range, crucial summer range, etc. Now, one of the other things, that we can do is actually be able to layer these things in real time. So here we can look at just one layer or perhaps we want to get a sense of looking at multiple layers together on the map. So again, just a quick introduction to another tool that is going to be available to you after tonight's presentation. I encourage you to come in here and interact with some of these tools and resources. Now, just to wrap up, I want to thank you all for joining me for this, and a reminder that next time we are going to be taking what we've learned tonight about how animals move across their landscape, how they interact with each other, and how that relates to we as humans. What does that mean for us? Where do we move across our landscape, and how can that potentially increase our ability to spread a disease such as COVID-19. So that's for next week, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, E.T.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Teal. Isn't that not fascinating how we have already used mapping, tracking of the bighorn sheep, and also you guys saw we can, using that data, we know where they live, where they can reproduce, and like summer, winter, we can track them almost in real time using GPS. You know, as Teal talked a lot about, they're susceptible to pneumonia, and so we need to test these bighorn sheep so that we can track the spread of pneumonia in those herds. So again, very similar to what we're doing right now with us as humans through this COVID-19. Like, we need to be able to understand and have data and be able to track it in very similar ways that we've done with animal population. So I think, Teal, thanks again. You did such a great job of explaining how current technology that we've used can now be applied towards humans. And as you heard from Teal, that's exactly the things that we are going to be talking about on Thursday night for part 2 of Technology Week. So anyways, let me just do a quick check to see if there's any questions in YouTube. I don't think I see anything there. So we will definitely have a Q&A, question and answer session for Teal on Thursday. And so definitely over the next couple days, think about that. And then right after this, we're going to post that link. So everything that you just saw in the video tonight, you'll be able to go into that map, play around, look at the bighorn sheep, watch those videos. So definitely experiment and get excited about mapping and technology. So, and again, tonight, the code word could have flashed tonight. It might be tomorrow night. You don't know. But if you want to win a 3D printer, then keep your eyes out for it. And then if you want to rewatch this video shortly after this, we'll be back again. So we are super excited to see you for part 2, Technology Week of WYSTEM, this Thursday, right here, 6 p.m. on YouTube Live. So we look forward to seeing you then. And until then, have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 days. See you then.